Well, I'm going to begin. I mean, right, Wyatt. I mean, it's one of those shows. I mean, where you just want to keep watching until the end, and you're just sort of desperate for that next episode to start. I just wonder if you recall your sort of experience first reading these scripts. Did you have all the scripts from the start, or were you kind of give them along the way? And did you have that same experience that we had watching it?
We were given up to six. They were working on seven, so there was no the final stages of how it was going to play out were, and I knew what happened. I knew what the end was, but how they were going to get there, we didn't know until a little later. And then, of course, as you progress through production, things change and scripts changed. But for the most part, they were ironed out the way they were before we got there, and were able to rehearse a lot of the stuff and get an idea of where we were going to go and how we were going to play it beforehand.
Could I just start by kind of asking about what attracted you initially to get involved in this project? And did you kind of know a little bit about the real case beforehand, or were you fresh to the story?
I read the book about 10 years ago, and I heard that they were making it into a movie, and this was maybe 7 or 8 years ago, and I knew I had driven through there a lot. I drive on that route through St. George, Utah, 2 or 3 times a year, so I'd been through Colorado City quite a bit. You do canyoneering and stuff when you go to Zion. They do a lot of day trips through Colorado City, and it was just an interesting place. It always was fascinating because you'd see kids in garments, traditional garments, in these in the city where every house has super high walls and cameras, and it's very odd. So it was always a little fascinating, and I just thought it would, looking at the people and looking at the characters, sometimes you think I think I could hopefully do a good job with this, so I'll throw my hat in the ring. And to be honest, when you see Ron Howard, Brian Grazer, Imagine, Dustin Lance Black, when you see that team and Jon Krakauer is the source material, you want to do it. It's something that you want to do. You're going to be shepherded in good hands. So that's how it all sort of came together.
Because you mentioned, obviously, there was, I think at one point of it being a movie, but purely from an actor's perspective, do you prefer getting your teeth into a character when it's in a kind of TV format, where you've got the kind of luxury of time and sort of successive kind of episodes to really get to grips with with all the sort of nuances to the character you're going to eventually portray?
Yeah, it's great when it's good. It's the same thing as anything. You can do a short film and get a lot, you can get a lot out of it if it's concise and told correctly, and you can feel this show is never going to end if it's not good. And it's the amount of wasted time you can spend watching a long television show. I think it all comes down to the same thing that it's always has. If the storytelling is really good and keeps you invested, this one was specifically important, I think, that it was long form. They tried for a long time in the movie space, but it has so many characters, it has so much story to tell, it has so much history of the story to tell that you almost can't do it in a movie. So this one lent itself to that, I think, really, really well, uniquely well. But I don't think I have one preference over the other. I still think that when a movie is made and it's really made well and it's special, that it can be a 2-hour period of time where it can be very affecting. It captures your attention in a different way, and so I don't have a preference. I don't think. I think they can both be great.
I was just wondering, so you mentioned that you'd read the book beforehand, but did you do any other kind of research before you started the role? Did you kind of do a deep dive into LDS and all that involved, or did you kind of stick to the scripts?
I did a lot of research on the family. I did a lot of research on Dan specifically. There's a couple things available to watch. There was audio recordings of him in prison talking to people on the phone that you could get a better idea of where his head was, because he wasn't being interviewed. So there was no the show aspect or the manipulation may have been a little less, or he was speaking a little more candidly. And so through that, you kind of develop what you think the character would be, how he was in the 80s and how the trajectory towards where he went. So that was the research, and yeah, a lot of watching LDS documentaries and as much as you could in that little time frame we had before the show started.
By the way, I just realized I forgot to say at the start, I'm Stephen Pay from HeyUGuys. I never introduced myself, so I've done it halfway through. Yeah, but I was going to say, I mean, I'm just wondering if you've ever seen the Book of Mormon, and if you've seen it since, or if your relationship with that's changed since.
No, I haven't seen it. It's just one of I would love to see it. I haven't seen it. I know those guys are unbelievably funny and right on. I think they're geniuses. But I haven't seen it, and I don't know if so. I think Lance said it. Like Mormon, it's either the Book of Mormon or it's the darkness of Under the Banner of Heaven. Like it's that's always how it's been portrayed, and so there's a degree of hilarity that's built into it. And I think that our show has a bit of that as well. Like there's some moments where it just seems so ridiculous and so funny and insane that some truth is stranger than fiction. So, but I haven't seen it. No.
We're talking a bit about the kind of amazing creative cast involved, but there was also such an all-star cast, but you're working with your fellow actors. I was just wondering a little bit maybe like what it was like filming with everybody. In particular, I was thinking about that scene in episode 1 where it's the family barbecue and you just look around and there's all these incredible talents. So what was that like?
That was when you get to do that, it's a blessing because it makes the job exponentially easier. When everybody's able to work on the same wavelength, or even on different wavelengths, but in the same story, and people can play and they're loose, but they're tied to the material. They're not going off into the ether, but they're not stuck inside of what they're doing. They're able to maneuver and manipulate the way that great actors can. So it was a blessing. It makes you spoiled because it's all you want to do, and that's not the case in everything. You don't have the ability even to do that because different shows require different tones that don't always lend themselves to a tone like this that actors can really sink their teeth into, or whatever you want to, how you want to call it. But it was just it was wonderful. It was a wonderful acting experience, one of the better ones I've had, and all put forward by the script. And when you have a script, you have a blueprint, architecture of a story that's well put together like that, and you get good actors. It's gonna hopefully turn out to be a good experience.
I think this is the last question, but I was going to ask. I've only seen sort of the first 2, but do you get to spend much time with Andrew Garfield? Because he seems to be one of the nicest people in the industry, and there's only one correct way to answer this question, but it's the answer that I want to hear.
Actually, Andrew's one of the worst people I've ever met in the industry. No, it was so much fun because you get to. I didn't get to work with him a ton, but we became really great friends in Calgary just because he's the nicest, best guy. He's just a great person. And when you meet people who you've really you have reverence towards over the years, and you hope that they are the way that you hope they are, and you get to meet them, and you go, "Oh my, you're totally exactly what I thought you would be like. You're the best dude. You're the best guy." And so that was a great. I feel like I made a new friend. You don't do that a ton. So just through that experience of being together in Calgary, it was, they made it special. Daisy, Seth, Chloe, everybody. But we were there together a lot from the beginning. And Andrew and I, we had a blast. It was fun. As ridiculous as it sounds for the show, and dark as it is, you got to kind of have fun. Without that, it can be it's 6 months in Calgary when it's -35. You got to find ways to have fun. And I couldn't have wished for a better group of people. They're all great people, and I say that not being Hollywood great people. They really are.
Yeah, that was the answer I was hoping for.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thanks so much for your time today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
See you guys.
Ladies Ladies and gentlemen, you're watching Hey You Guys!
Hey You Guys, huh?
Hey, you guys.
Is that from the Goonies?
It is indeed, yes.
Nice.
Hey,